What do Damon Hill, Nico Rosberg, and Felipe Massa have in common? They all learned the hard way that winning races for your team doesn't guarantee they won't stab you in the back. F1 teams have perfected the art of betrayal, turning world champions into unwanted baggage and promising rookies into corporate pawns. From championship-winning drivers getting fired to teammates being ordered to crash deliberately, the paddock is littered with careers destroyed by their own teams. We're about to expose the most ruthless betrayals in motorsport history, starting with how teams transform their fastest drivers into professional supporting actors. Grab your popcorn because this gets ugly fast. The classic wingman treatment. The first betrayal technique teams love is the classic wingman treatment. What's the difference between a wingman and a doormat? About $200 million and a Mercedes contract. F1 teams have perfected the dark art of turning championship-caliber drivers into professional cheerleaders for their golden boys. They take world-class talent and reprogram them into corporate assets that smile while handing over victories on command. Valtteri Bottas spent 5 years at Mercedes winning races and qualifying on pole, only to watch strategy splits and team orders consistently favor Hamilton. The defining moment came at the 2018 Russian GP, where, despite Bottas dominating the entire weekend, the infamous radio call instructed him to yield victory to Hamilton to help the championship margin. But Bottas wasn't the first driver to get the wingman treatment. Rubens Barrichello lived through the most humiliating team order in F1 history at Austria 2002. Ferrari literally radioed him to slow down on the final straight and hand over a guaranteed victory to Schumacher. Barrichello had dominated the entire weekend, controlled the race from pole position, and then got ordered to pull over like he was blocking traffic on a highway. The betrayal was particularly egregious because it happened early in the season, and Schumacher ended up winning the championship that year with more than double Barrichello's points, proving the humiliation was utterly unnecessary for the championship fight. Ferrari's early 2000s operation ran like a championship factory, with Schumacher as the sole product. They built systematic strategy tilts that turned every race into a Michael Schumacher highlight reel. Barrichello would get inferior pit strategies, experimental setups that somehow never worked, and fuel loads that conveniently required earlier stops. The Brazilian was fast enough to win multiple championships, but Ferrari treated him like expensive testing equipment. Felipe Massa discovered how quickly wingman status can destroy a career after his horrific 2009 Hungary crash. He returned from his life-threatening head injury ready to fight for championships, but Ferrari had already mentally moved on. The brutal Fernando is faster than you radio call at Germany. 2010 came exactly 1 year after his career-altering head injury in Hungary, making the corporate cruelty feel even sharper. He went from leading the race to pulling over for Alonso like a taxi driver following GPS directions. The wingman treatment weaponizes trust in the cruelest way possible. These drivers believed their teams when they said, "We're backing both drivers equally," while simultaneously programming them to self-destruct on command. Teams would smile during press conferences about equal treatment, while secretly designing strategies that made their preferred driver's path to victory as smooth as possible. These weren't isolated incidents or split-second strategic decisions made under pressure. Ferrari's Schumacher era, Mercedes' Hamilton favoritism, and countless other examples reveal calculated business decisions disguised as team strategy. The wingman role gets manufactured in boardrooms months before cars even hit the track. Teams decide who they want to win championships and then construct elaborate theatrical performances to make it happen. The wingman role isn't about loyalty or team spirit. It's about manufacturing championship outcomes while maintaining the illusion that both drivers have equal chances. Teams want the prestige of employing two elite drivers while ensuring only one can actually compete for titles, getting to claim they have the strongest driver lineup while secretly operating a rigged competition. Barrichello, Bottas, and Massa learned that being fast enough to win championships means absolutely nothing when your own team treats you like expensive spare parts. They had the talent to be world champions, but their teams decided that particular story didn't fit the marketing strategy. But at least wingmen get to keep their seats for a few seasons before the inevitable betrayal. Some drivers don't even get that luxury. The mid-season execution. Mid-season driver swaps are like getting promoted at work. celebrating with your family, then finding your replacement sitting at your desk the next Monday morning. F1 teams have mastered the art of character assassination, destroying careers faster than a Haas pit stop goes wrong. They don't just fire drivers, they obliterate their confidence and rewrite history to make it look justified. Daniil Kvyat learned this lesson in the most brutal way possible during 2016. He scored a podium finish at the Chinese Grand Prix, standing on that podium grinning like he'd finally made it. Just weeks later, right before the Spanish Grand Prix, Red Bull demoted him back to Toro Rosso because they wanted their shiny new toy Max Verstappen in the big seat. Red Bull swapped Kvyat out immediately after Russia, treating his China podium like a temporary footnote in Verstappen's narrative. Kvyat went from celebrating champagne showers to packing his belongings in the space of a month. Red Bull's message was crystal clear. Your performance doesn't matter when we've already decided your replacement is more important to our future. Kvyat had delivered exactly what Red Bull wanted from him, but they treated that podium like it was an administrative error that needed correcting. He became collateral damage in Verstappen's promotion story. Pierre Gasly experienced an even more public humiliation during his 2019 Red Bull nightmare. The team's Verstappen favoritism became so obvious it turned into internet memes. Gasly would get inferior strategies, different car setups, and somehow always seemed to struggle with handling while Verstappen dominated in identical machinery. Christian Horner openly admitted that Gasly's performances left the team one-legged in too many races, basically announcing his inadequacy to the entire paddock. Gasly managed just 63 points by mid-season, while Verstappen racked up 181 points in the same car. But here's the thing about Red Bull's operation. They don't just fail to support struggling drivers, they actively create conditions that make failure inevitable. Gasly wasn't just underperforming, he was drowning in a system designed to highlight Verstappen's superiority. Red Bull jettisoned him back to the junior team, only for Gasly to later win a Grand Prix with AlphaTauri, turning Red Bull's decision into a joke about their own corporate short-sightedness. Mark Webber faced a pattern of costly reliability issues and strategic decisions at Red Bull that consistently seemed to happen during crucial moments, with strategies that favored his teammate Sebastian Vettel. Red Bull created difficult conditions, then acted surprised when Webber couldn't compete. The Multi-21 incident at Malaysia 2013 wasn't just Vettel being selfish, it was Red Bull's hierarchy made visible for the world to see. Despite explicit team orders to hold position, Vettel ignored the radio and overtook Webber with 13 laps remaining. Webber later described feeling deeply saddened and said the team had reached a sorry state. Red Bull's management barely reprimanded Vettel, later explaining the betrayal as payback for an earlier incident where Webber squeezed Vettel at the start of the 2012 Brazilian GP, making the rivalry institutional rather than personal. These mid-season executions follow an identical pattern every single time. Teams create impossible working conditions, sabotage their unwanted driver through strategic incompetence, then blame the driver for failing to thrive in a rigged system. They rewrite history faster than Wikipedia editors, turning yesterday's heroes into today's cautionary tales about drivers who couldn't handle the pressure. Red Bull's driver program operates like a corporate meat grinder, with Verstappen-shaped output requirements. Anyone who doesn't fit that specific mold gets processed through their Toro Rosso rehabilitation facility or discarded entirely. They've perfected the art of making career destruction look like performance-based decision-making. Mid-season demotions aren't about lap times or championship standings. They're about teams cutting losses on investments that threaten their preferred narrative. But the real betrayal happens when teams decide your replacement before you even know you're being replaced. The new toy syndrome. F1. Teams treat drivers like iPhones. Last year's model becomes obsolete the moment something shinier arrives in their corporate showroom. Teams systematically starve proven performers of resources while pouring everything into their latest acquisition, turning championship-caliber drivers into expensive decorations collecting dust in the garage. Daniel Ricciardo watched Red Bull rebuild their entire operation around Max Verstappen, transforming him from co-leader to expensive guest in his own team. Ricciardo had won races, delivered podiums, and built genuine chemistry with the Red Bull crew, but none of that mattered when the team decided Verstappen represented their future. Even with multiple wins already under his belt, the project revolved entirely around Verstappen. The garage culture shifted so dramatically that Ricciardo felt like he was visiting someone else's workplace every race weekend. The breaking point came after the Baku collision where Ricciardo and Verstappen took each other out while fighting for the lead. In the immediate aftermath, Ricciardo reportedly felt he was unfairly asked internally to back off next time, while Verstappen received a quiet pass, demonstrating how completely the team's loyalty had shifted. Ricciardo wasn't just fighting other drivers anymore, he was fighting his own garage. Ricciardo's 2018 Red Bull exit wasn't about money or contract disputes. He watched the team's development focus, engineering resources, and strategic priority funnel toward Verstappen. Red Bull's personnel started gravitating toward Verstappen like he was the only driver worth impressing. Contract negotiations became weird with late offers that felt more like afterthoughts than genuine attempts to retain a proven winner. The Australian described seeking a fresh and new challenge with Renault because he needed an environment where he felt valued rather than tolerated. Red Bull had mentally moved on from Ricciardo, while he was still delivering results, treating him like temporary furniture until their real driver matured. Carlos Sainz delivered actual wins for Ferrari, proving he could handle championship pressure and maximize the car's potential. But Ferrari announced Hamilton's multi-year contract for 2025 in early February 2024, effectively making Sainz a celebrated placeholder for an entire season despite having won races and delivered strongly. The temporal absurdity was staggering. Ferrari told the world they'd rather have an aging Hamilton than a proven winner in his prime, reducing Sainz to a seat warmer for their marketing dream. Sainz acknowledged the situation with diplomatic language, saying news about my future will be announced in due course. But his surprise was obvious. He'd delivered exactly what Ferrari wanted from him, only to discover his victories were viewed as pleasant accidents rather than evidence of his championship potential. Esteban Ocon experienced the most brutal version of new toy syndrome at Force India. He performed well, helped save the team from bankruptcy through his consistent results, and dominated his teammate in qualifying battles. Then, Lawrence Stroll bought the team and immediately installed his son Lance in Ocon's seat with a long-term deal that had nothing to do with lap times. Ocon openly mentioned that performance is not the only thing that comes into play. It has to be other things, highlighting his understanding that Lance Stroll's acquisition of his seat via his billionaire father had overridden his professional merit, despite Ocon leading Perez dramatically in 2018 qualifying duels just prior to the swap. He went from crucial team member to unemployed driver because billionaire dads don't care about qualifying statistics or points contributions. New toy syndrome reduces championship-caliber drivers to supporting actors in their own careers, watching teams invest in potential rather than proven performance. Merit becomes completely irrelevant when teams decide they want a different brand image or marketing narrative. Ricciardo's race wins meant nothing when Red Bull wanted to build around Verstappen's youth. Sainz's Ferrari victories became footnotes when they decided Hamilton's legacy fit their corporate strategy better. The new toy syndrome reveals F1's most brutal truth. Your track record means absolutely nothing when teams want a younger, cheaper, or more politically convenient replacement. Teams don't hesitate to discard proven winners for unproven potential, treating driver loyalty like a renewable resource they can replace whenever the corporate math changes direction. But sometimes teams don't even wait for the math to change. Sometimes they fire you right after you've given them everything they wanted. The championship year firing. Damon Hill delivered Williams their 1996 championship, carrying the team through an entire season of pressure and expectations. He won 8 races, dominated qualifying sessions, and brought home the Constructors' Championship alongside his driver's title. Williams had everything they wanted: trophies, prestige, and global recognition. Then Frank Williams decided not to renew Hill's contract because he found someone cheaper and quieter who wouldn't demand equal treatment or question strategic decisions. The betrayal ran deeper than anyone realized at the time. Williams had already agreed a deal with Heinz-Harald Frentzen mid-season behind Hill's back, effectively treating their champion like a temp, even before the season ended. Hill's brutal exit became the corporate template for cost-cutting, disguised as strategic planning, turning his championship season into a job interview that he somehow failed despite winning everything available. The decision revealed Williams' true priorities. They valued compliance over championship-winning ability, preferring drivers who accepted whatever treatment the team dished out without complaints or contract negotiations. Hill's success had made him expensive and confident, two qualities Williams decided they couldn't afford in their corporate structure. Nico Rosberg faced a different kind of championship year betrayal at Mercedes in 2016. He beat Hamilton in identical machinery, surviving the psychological warfare of fighting his childhood friend for an entire season. But Mercedes' response to his title victory felt surprisingly muted, lacking the genuine celebration you'd expect for a team that just won both championships. Rosberg later described feeling that the team's reaction lacked authentic celebration, which tells you everything about Mercedes' internal priorities. Even beating Hamilton couldn't secure his long-term standing within a team that seemed to subtly favor Hamilton's narrative and career trajectory. Mercedes had invested years building Hamilton's brand story, and Rosberg's championship victory disrupted their carefully crafted marketing strategy. The team's cold response to their actual champion suggested they viewed Rosberg's title as an administrative inconvenience rather than sporting achievement. Despite his success, the muted celebration and underlying political reality made him realize the war was bigger than the racetrack. 5 days after winning the championship and achieving his childhood dream, Rosberg retired voluntarily from Formula One, walking away from the immense pressure and toxic environment that even ultimate success couldn't fix. Championship success becomes a corporate liability when teams calculate that loyalty costs more than replacement. Hill and Rosberg learned that ultimate sporting achievement means nothing when the spreadsheet calculations don't align with executive preferences. Teams start viewing championship drivers as expensive problems rather than valuable assets the moment they start demanding respect or recognition. The paradox works like this. Championship success makes drivers confident enough to demand better treatment, but teams prefer compliant employees over successful ones. Hill wanted contract negotiations that reflected his championship status. Rosberg expected genuine celebration for beating the team's preferred driver. Both discoveries were viewed as character flaws rather than reasonable expectations. Championship year betrayals expose how teams view titles as corporate achievements where the driver serves as temporary labor, easily replaced once the immediate benefits have been extracted. Williams and Mercedes proved that championship trophies don't guarantee job security when teams prioritize corporate convenience over sporting merit. But championship year firings represent just one weapon in F1's betrayal arsenal. When teams face external pressures and internal power struggles, drivers become collateral damage in wars that have nothing to do with racing. The political meltdown. F1 politics make Game of Thrones look like a children's tea party, and drivers are usually the first casualties when corporate warfare breaks out. When team politics explode into public scandals, drivers become collateral damage in wars they didn't start and can't win. They get caught between corporate executives, legal departments, and media narratives that treat their careers like expendable ammunition. Fernando Alonso's 2007 McLaren disaster combined Spygate espionage with obvious Hamilton favoritism, creating a political nuclear meltdown that destroyed relationships and reputations. McLaren was accused of possessing stolen Ferrari technical information through their employee Mike Coughlin, who had obtained confidential data from Ferrari's Nigel Stepney. The scandal turned McLaren's garage into a battlefield where drivers became pawns in corporate legal strategies. Amid Spygate and a deeply split garage, Alonso believed favoritism and politics systematically undermined him while the team built up their rookie golden boy. The political warfare escalated until Alonso started fighting back through on-track rebellion. During qualifying in Hungary, Alonso deliberately held up Hamilton by staying stationary in his pit box, creating a public spectacle that exposed McLaren's toxic internal dynamics. The move symbolized complete breakdown between driver and team, proving that even world champions become disposable when corporate politics explode. McLaren was ultimately hit with a record $100 million fine and excluded from the Constructors' Championship, but still ultimately cut Alonso loose after he lost the title to Kimi Räikkönen. The team treated him like he was responsible for their corporate espionage problems rather than a victim of their political incompetence. They destroyed their relationship with a proven champion to protect their investment in an unproven rookie. Sebastian Vettel experienced a different type of political humiliation as Ferrari's internal politics shifted toward Charles Leclerc during his final years with the team. He was reportedly dropped via a phone call in 2020, even while the season was delayed. In his final year, he drove a broadly uncompetitive 2020 Ferrari as the team's priority clearly tilted toward Leclerc, culminating in an impersonal exit call that showed a complete lack of professionalism from the team. The German watched Ferrari's engineering focus and resource allocation gradually favor Leclerc's driving style and preferences. Strategy meetings started revolving around Leclerc's championship potential, while treating Vettel like temporary furniture they needed to manage until his contract expired. Ferrari turned one of the sport's most successful drivers into a lame duck within his own team. Jenson Button survived his own political nightmare at BAR Honda, where corporate machinations and leadership changes created impossible working conditions. The team went through ownership changes, management reshuffles, and strategic pivots that left drivers struggling to understand their role within constantly shifting political structures. Button had to navigate corporate instability while trying to compete against 19 other cars. Political meltdowns reveal the sport's true power structures, where drivers serve as pawns in much larger corporate games involving sponsors, manufacturers, and media narratives. These political storms reshape entire team hierarchies, often destroying multiple careers simultaneously as executives prioritize damage control over sporting performance. Drivers caught in political crossfire learn that survival depends on corporate allegiances rather than lap times, discovering that the most dangerous competitor isn't the car next to them, but the boardroom politics happening behind closed doors. But political betrayals are just one weapon in F1's arsenal of career destruction. Sometimes teams skip the politics entirely and go straight for the wallet. The financial betrayal. Money talks in F1, and what it usually says to drivers is, "Pack your bags, we found someone cheaper." Financial betrayals reveal F1's most brutal truth. Driver careers are just line items on corporate balance sheets where talent gets deleted when the accounting department finds better deals. Teams treat championship credentials like expired coupons that lost their value the moment someone shows up with a bigger checkbook. Sergio Perez literally initiated bankruptcy proceedings to save the jobs and existence of the Force India team in 2018, putting his own career at risk to keep the operation alive. He rescued the team from financial collapse when nobody else would step up, becoming their corporate savior during the darkest period in their history. The team promised him leadership in the transition and treated him like their hero for keeping everyone employed. But the Stroll family purchase turned Perez from team savior into expensive inconvenience faster than you can say trust fund baby. Despite having a valid contract through 2022 and delivering consistent results including race victories, Perez was told he would be replaced. Racing Point invoked an exit clause they'd probably been planning to use since Lawrence Stroll signed the ownership papers, tossing him out the moment a new financial opportunity arose. Perez expressed his hurt by admitting he had no plan B and that the decision stung because he'd bet on the team during very rough times. The Mexican had literally kept Force India's lights on through their financial crisis, only to get replaced by the owner's son, who brought more money than racing ability. Financial investment trumped racing performance so completely that Perez's loyalty became a corporate liability. Ayrton Senna suffered through similar financial betrayals at Lotus, where money was prioritized over performance in the cruelest possible way. Senna consistently begged for crucial upgrades like new suspension technology and better electronics, but Lotus repeatedly cited costs as the prohibitive factor. Then they simultaneously allocated active suspension and better engine maps to Satoru Nakajima, the driver preferred by new manufacturer partner Honda, proving their financial priorities had nothing to do with actual budget constraints. The Brazilian was racing with outdated technology despite his extraordinary talent, because Honda's financial backing for their preferred drivers overrode sporting merit. Senna's access to performance data became restricted while inferior drivers got superior equipment and support, turning one of the sport's greatest talents into a victim of corporate financial calculations. Alain Prost discovered the brutal business nature of corporate image protection when Ferrari sacked him before the final race of the 1991 season, simply because he publicly called their struggling car a truck. Prost had reflected the team's genuinely poor performance with their uncompetitive machinery. But Ferrari's corporate leadership decided that protecting their brand image was more important than acknowledging their engineering failures, preferring corporate silence over acknowledging reality. The Renault Crashgate scandal revealed how financial pressure causes corporate desperation that destroys driver careers. The pressure explicitly led management, including Briatore and Simons, to conspire with driver Nelson Piquet Jr. to deliberately crash in the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix to boost teammate Alonso's result, proving teams will sacrifice driver careers for strategic corporate benefit and manipulate race results to satisfy sponsor relationships rather than sporting competition. Financial calculations consistently override sporting merit because teams operate on pure corporate logic where championship credentials become worthless against better financial terms. Perez's race victories meant nothing when Stroll's investment portfolio offered long-term stability. Senna's talent couldn't compete with Honda's financial backing for their preferred drivers. But sometimes teams don't even bother with the financial calculations or corporate restructuring. Sometimes they just decide your life needs to become completely unbearable until you beg them to let you leave. The retirement conspiracy. The most sophisticated betrayals don't involve pink slips or contract terminations, but psychological warfare designed to make talented drivers beg for release from their own teams. Teams don't always need to fire drivers. They just need to introduce doubt and undermine confidence until quitting seems like the only escape route from corporate hell. The psychological toll of institutional betrayal destroys even the strongest mental resilience. When drivers realize their own team views them as disposable, every struggle becomes a question of whether it's their performance or deliberate sabotage. The uncertainty creates paranoia and self-doubt that affects every aspect of their racing and decision-making process. Valtteri Bottas experienced the deepest psychological violence of being treated as disposable even when leading a race. After Mercedes instructed him to cede victory at the 2018 Russian Grand Prix, Bottas admitted he contemplated quitting, of giving up Formula One entirely. He felt that the team treated him as a number 2 driver and described the experience as deeply angering, saying, "Straight after the race, I said I would not do it again." The Russian Grand Prix betrayal revealed how team orders can push drivers toward retirement rather than continuing the psychological torture. Bottas had dominated the entire weekend, controlled the race from pole position, and then got ordered to pull over for Hamilton's championship fight. The institutional message was crystal clear. Your victories don't matter when we need you to be a supporting actor. Nico Rosberg's 2016 championship retirement followed similar psychological patterns, though his situation was more complex. After beating Hamilton in identical machinery and surviving an entire season of psychological warfare fighting his childhood friend, Mercedes' response to his title victory felt surprisingly muted. The team's cold reaction to their actual champion suggested they viewed Rosberg's title as an administrative inconvenience rather than sporting achievement. Rosberg later described feeling that the team's reaction lacked authentic celebration, revealing Mercedes' internal priorities even when he delivered exactly what they wanted. 5 days after winning the championship and achieving his childhood dream, he walked away from the immense pressure and toxic environment that even ultimate success couldn't fix. The psychological toll of fighting for a team that secretly preferred his teammate made retirement feel like liberation rather than sacrifice. Retirement conspiracies represent the ultimate corporate gaslighting campaign, where teams convince drivers that leaving is their own choice rather than the inevitable result of systematic persecution. Teams rewrite history to make voluntary departures look like personal decisions based on driver preferences rather than corporate manipulation campaigns. The cruelest betrayals make drivers complicit in their own destruction by convincing them they chose to leave when they were systematically pushed out through psychological warfare. Teams turn victims into willing participants in their own career destruction, creating perfect corporate cover stories that hide the true nature of their employment practices. Forced retirements prove that teams prefer drivers to quit voluntarily rather than create messy public firing scandals that expose their toxic internal cultures. Clean departures protect team reputations while achieving the same personnel changes that outright firings would accomplish. The corporate playbook prioritizes image management over honest employment practices. But sometimes drivers find ways to fight back against the corporate machinery that tried to destroy them. Sometimes they get the chance to prove that the problem was never their talent. It was their team's inability to recognize what they had. The Monza Miracle. Pierre Gasly's 2020 Monza victory wasn't just a win. It was the middle finger heard around the motorsport world. Just 13 months earlier, Red Bull had fired him mid-season for underperforming, treating him like a failed science experiment who couldn't handle the pressure of the big seat. The demotion was supposed to end his championship aspirations and reduce him to a supporting actor in Verstappen's success story, proving that Red Bull's judgment was purely political rather than performance-based. But Gasly's Monza triumph represented everything Red Bull's political machine tried to suppress: pure speed over manufactured narratives and individual brilliance over corporate convenience. The Frenchman took an AlphaTauri car that had no business winning races and turned it into championship-caliber machinery through sheer determination and skill. He proved that Red Bull's evaluation failures were about corporate politics rather than driving ability. The victory vindicated every driver who ever questioned whether their struggles resulted from personal limitations or team sabotage. Gasly had spent months wondering if Red Bull was right about his capabilities, if maybe he really couldn't compete at the highest level. Monza answered those questions with authority, proving that talent survives corporate stupidity when given proper support and strategic competence. Gasly's emotional reaction after crossing the finish line was pure catharsis, the release of someone who survived systematic corporate assassination attempts and lived to tell the story. The raw joy poured out like venom against Red Bull's judgment, his emotion visible proof that they gave up on him too soon. He expressed complete disbelief, saying, "It's unbelievable. I'm not realizing what's happening right now. It was such a crazy race, and then we capitalized on the red flag. I've been through so much in the space of 18 months. It's crazy. Honestly, it's so crazy, and I am so happy I can't thank them enough." The victory turned into a scream that silenced his critics. Those 18 months included public humiliation, confidence destruction, and career uncertainty that would have broken weaker personalities. Gasly had endured corporate gaslighting campaigns designed to make him question his own abilities, only to discover that the problem was never his talent, but Red Bull's toxic internal culture. His victory exposed Red Bull's talent evaluation failures in the most public way possible. They had discarded a race winner because he didn't fit their corporate narrative, proving that their driver development program operates on political calculations rather than pure merit. Gasly's success with AlphaTauri revealed how much potential Red Bull had tried to bury through systematic undermining and strategic sabotage. The win marked France's first Formula One victory since 1996, adding historical significance to personal vindication. Individual brilliance had transcended corporate betrayal, at least temporarily, proving that genuine talent finds ways to surface despite institutional obstacles. Gasly had transformed from corporate failure to national hero through persistence and skill. Gasly's Monza miracle proves that while teams can destroy careers and undermine confidence, they can't permanently suppress genuine talent when it finds the right environment. The victory stands as proof that the most dangerous competitor isn't always the car beside you on track. Sometimes it's the team behind you trying to limit your potential through political manipulation and strategic incompetence. But even spectacular vindication like Gasly's can't change the fundamental reality that drives every betrayal we've examined. The sport has revealed its true nature through these stories of corporate cruelty and systematic career destruction. Why talent isn't enough? F1 has taught us the sport's most brutal lesson. Being the fastest driver means nothing if you're not the most politically convenient one. Every betrayal we've covered reveals the systematic corporate machinery that treats drivers as disposable inventory rather than athletic talent. Teams operate like ruthless corporations where driver careers become quarterly profit projections, subject to immediate revision when the numbers don't align with executive preferences. The paddock isn't a sporting venue. It's a corporate boardroom where talent gets deleted by spreadsheet calculations and political maneuvering. The difference between the drivers we named and the true legends is often just one corporate decision. The legends simply had teams that aligned their ruthlessness toward external competitors, not their own drivers. The most dangerous competitor is your own team principal holding termination papers while smiling.